The Andes Mountains stretch like a great backbone along the western edge of South America, rising from the sea in dramatic peaks that pierce the sky at heights exceeding 20,000 feet. This formidable landscape, with its deep valleys, highland plateaus, and snow-capped summits, became the cradle of some of humanity's most ingenious civilizations. Here, in this vertical world where oxygen grows thin and the sun burns bright, indigenous peoples developed sophisticated societies that would flourish for centuries before the arrival of European explorers. Imagine, if you will, the morning mist rolling across terraced mountainsides, where ancient farmers once tended crops of quinoa, potatoes, and maize at altitudes where few plants dare to grow. Picture stone cities built with such precision that not even a knife blade can slip between the massive blocks. Structures so enduring that earthquakes which topple modern buildings leave these ancient monuments standing unchanged. Envision golden temples where the sun's first rays would illuminate sacred ceremonies, and roads that wound through mountain passes connecting far-flung provinces in a communication network that spanned thousands of miles. Tonight, as we embark on this tranquil exploration, we shall encounter the Chavín, whose mysterious artwork still puzzles archaeologists today. We shall walk with the Moche, master artisans who created vessels so lifelike they seem to breathe with ancient spirits. We shall marvel at the Nazca, who drew enormous pictures on the desert floor that can only be fully appreciated from the heavens above. We shall visit the Tiwanaku, whose stone monuments stand sentinel beside the world's highest navigable lake. We shall witness the rise of the Wari, early empire builders who unified diverse cultures under their administrative genius. And finally, we shall accompany the Inca as they create the largest empire in the pre-Columbian Americas, a civilization so advanced in engineering and organization that its achievements continue to astound modern observers. Each of these cultures represents a unique adaptation to the challenging Andean environment, demonstrating human ingenuity in the face of geographical extremes. They developed innovative agricultural techniques, creating terraced fields that transformed steep mountainsides into productive farmland. They mastered the art of working with precious metals, creating objects of such beauty that Spanish conquistadors would melt them down for their gold content alone. They engineered road systems that traversed seemingly impossible terrain, connecting coastal deserts with highland valleys and jungle frontiers. They developed complex religious and social systems that unified diverse ethnic groups under shared beliefs and common purposes. As we journey together through these ancient landscapes, feel the cool mountain breeze on your face, hear the gentle whisper of wind through stone corridors, sense the profound spirituality that permeated every aspect of daily life in these remarkable civilizations. Allow the rhythm of our exploration to carry you peacefully through the night, as we uncover the mysteries of peoples who lived in harmony with one of Earth's most challenging environments, creating beauty and achieving greatness in their mountain realm. The story we shall unfold spans nearly 4,000 years of continuous cultural development, from the earliest ceremonial centers of the Chavín around 900 BCE to the final days of Inca resistance in the 16th century CE. Throughout this vast sweep of time, we shall observe how each civilization built upon the achievements of its predecessors, creating an unbroken chain of cultural innovation and artistic expression that represents one of humanity's greatest achievements in environmental adaptation and social organization. As we drift back through the centuries, settling into the comfortable rhythm of deep time, we find ourselves in the misty highlands of northern Peru, around 900 BCE, where a mysterious civilization is beginning to emerge from the mountain valleys. The Chavín culture, named after their principal ceremonial center at Chavín de Huántar, represents the first great unifying force in Andean civilization, a phenomenon that would influence art, religion, and society across a vast region for nearly 700 years. Picture yourself standing in the courtyard of Chavín de Huántar on a quiet morning, when the last stars are fading from the high-altitude sky. The temple complex before you rises in tiers of carefully fitted stone, its surfaces adorned with intricate carvings that seem to shift and transform in the changing light. These are not merely decorative elements, but profound religious symbols that speak of a sophisticated cosmology, a way of understanding the world that sees spiritual power flowing through all aspects of the natural environment. The Chavín people developed what archaeologists call a horizon style, an artistic and religious tradition that spread far beyond their highland homeland to influence cultures along the coast and deep into the Amazon basin. This remarkable cultural expansion occurred not through military conquest, but through the power of their religious ideas and the magnetism of their ceremonial centers. Pilgrims would travel for hundreds of miles to participate in rituals at Chavín de Huántar, carrying home with them artistic motifs and religious concepts that would transform their local traditions. At the heart of Chavín iconography stands the staff god, a central deity depicted holding ceremonial staffs and radiating supernatural power. This figure, with its fanged mouth, serpentine hair, and penetrating gaze, appears in countless variations throughout Chavín art, sometimes shown frontally in positions of divine authority, other times in profile as if moving through the spiritual landscape. The staff god represents the synthesis of highland and lowland religious traditions, combining elements from mountain cultures with imagery drawn from the tropical forests to the east. The Chavín mastered the art of working in stone with a sophistication that would influence Andean sculpture for millennia to come. Their craftsmen created massive monoliths, like the lanzón, a 15-foot-tall granite pillar carved with the image of a supernatural being that dominates the underground chamber at the heart of their temple. This remarkable sculpture, with its elaborate headdress and ornate costume, seems to pulse with life in the flickering light of torches, its carved features appearing to shift and animate as shadows play across the stone surface. But perhaps even more impressive than their monumental sculpture was the Chavín achievement in textile production. Working with cotton from the coast and wool from highland, llamas and alpacas, Chavín weavers created fabrics of extraordinary complexity and beauty. These textiles served not merely as clothing, but as repositories of religious and cultural knowledge, their intricate patterns encoding complex mythological narratives and ceremonial instructions that could be read by initiated members of their society. The Chavín people lived in a world where the boundaries between the natural and supernatural were fluid and permeable. Shamanic practices played a central role in their religious life, with spiritual leaders using hallucinogenic plants to journey into otherworldly realms where they could communicate with supernatural beings and gain knowledge essential for their community's well-being. Archaeological evidence suggests that the complex acoustic properties of their temples were designed to amplify and enhance these altered states of consciousness, creating sonic environments that supported mystical experiences. As we drift through the Chavín settlements scattered across their highland domain, we observe a society based on small-scale agricultural communities connected by shared religious beliefs and artistic traditions. Their farmers developed sophisticated irrigation systems that brought water from mountain streams to terraced fields where they grew potatoes, quinoa, and other highland crops. They domesticated llamas and alpacas, animals that provided not only wool and transportation, but also spiritual connections to the mountain deities they revered. The Chavín economy was based on the exchange of goods and ideas across vast distances, creating trade networks that connected the Pacific coast with the Amazon basin and the highland valleys with both lowland regions. Spondylus shells from tropical waters found their way to highland temples, while highland gold appeared in coastal workshops. This economic integration supported the spread of Chavín religious ideas and artistic styles, creating the first truly pan-Andean cultural phenomenon. Their settlements reflect a deep understanding of the sacred landscape, with temples and residential areas positioned to take advantage of astronomical alignments and natural topographical features that held religious significance. Water played a crucial role in their ceremonial life, with elaborate drainage systems that channeled streams through their temples, creating the sound of flowing water that enhanced the mystical atmosphere of their religious ceremonies. As the centuries passed, Chavín influence gradually waned, but their legacy lived on in the artistic traditions and religious concepts they had disseminated throughout the Andes. The staff god would reappear in later cultures, transformed but recognizable, and their techniques of stone carving and textile production would be refined and perfected by subsequent civilizations. The Chavín had established the fundamental patterns of Andean civilization, the integration of diverse ecological zones, the importance of ceremonial centers as unifying forces, and the sophisticated use of art and architecture to express complex religious and social ideas. As we prepare to journey forward through time, leaving the misty highlands where the Chavín created their remarkable synthesis of art and spirituality, we carry with us an appreciation for their foundational role in Andean civilization. They showed that complex societies could flourish in the challenging mountain environment, and they established artistic and religious traditions that would echo through the centuries, influencing every subsequent culture that arose in their highland realm. As the morning sun rises over the coastal deserts of northern Peru, we find ourselves transported to around 100 CE, where a remarkable civilization is flourishing in the river valleys that cut through the arid landscape like green ribbons of life. The Moche people, inheritors of coastal traditions that stretch back over a millennium, are creating one of ancient America's most sophisticated and artistically accomplished societies, transforming the harsh desert environment into a realm of monumental architecture, exquisite craftsmanship, and complex social organization. Imagine walking through a Moche city in the early morning hours, when the desert air is still cool and the first light illuminates the massive adobe pyramids that dominate the urban landscape. These structures, built from millions of sun-dried mud bricks, rise like artificial mountains from the valley floor, their stepped silhouettes echoing the distant Andes that provide the life-giving water for this desert civilization. The largest of these monuments, the Huaza del Sol, contains over 140 million adobe bricks, making it one of the largest structures ever built in the pre-Columbian Americas. The Moche achievement in ceramics represents perhaps the finest artistic tradition in the ancient world, surpassing even the celebrated pottery of classical Greece in its technical perfection and expressive power. Moche potters created vessels that function as three-dimensional portraits, capturing individual human faces with such realism that we feel we could recognize these people if we met them walking down a street today. Their portrait vessels reveal a society of remarkable diversity, showing people of different ages, social classes, and ethnic backgrounds, some healthy and vigorous, others marked by disease or injury, all rendered with compassionate attention to individual humanity. But the Moche ceramic tradition extends far beyond portraiture to encompass every aspect of their world. Their stirrup spout bottles depict scenes of daily life with documentary precision: farmers planting crops in carefully tended fields, fishermen launching reed boats into the Pacific surf, warriors preparing for battle in elaborate costumes, shamans conducting ceremonies in temple courtyards. These ceramic narratives provide us with an intimate window into a vanished world, showing us how these ancient people lived, worked, played, and worshipped in their desert homeland. The Moche developed the most sophisticated metallurgical tradition in the pre-Columbian Americas, working not only with gold and silver, but also with copper, creating alloys that allowed them to produce tools, weapons, and ornaments of remarkable variety and quality. Their goldsmiths created objects of breathtaking beauty, delicate ear flares that catch and reflect light like miniature suns, ceremonial goblets decorated with scenes of supernatural power, headdresses that transform their wearers into living representations of divine authority. In 1987, archaeologists discovered the tomb of a Moche ruler now known as the Lord of Sipan, a burial that revealed the full splendor of Moche elite culture. This individual was interred wearing a golden headdress, a gold and turquoise necklace, golden arm protectors, and a crescent-shaped nose ornament, all crafted with technical perfection that demonstrates the extraordinary skill of Moche artisans. The tomb contained over 1,000 objects, including ceramics, textiles, and metal ornaments that represent one of the richest archaeological discoveries ever made in the Americas. The Moche economy was based on intensive agriculture in the river valleys, supplemented by fishing along the Pacific coast and hunting in the hills that border the desert. They developed sophisticated irrigation systems that captured water from rivers during the brief rainy season and distributed it through networks of canals to fields where they grew corn, beans, squash, and other crops. Their farmers also cultivated cotton, which provided the raw material for a textile industry that produced fabrics of remarkable quality and artistic sophistication. Moche society was highly stratified, with a warrior priest elite ruling over communities of farmers, fishermen, and craftspeople. Their art reveals a culture obsessed with warfare and sacrifice, with elaborate ceremonies in which captured enemies were ritually killed and their blood offered to the gods. These sacrificial rituals were not expressions of cruelty, but profound religious ceremonies designed to maintain the cosmic balance and ensure the continued fertility of their desert homeland. The Moche developed one of the most sophisticated understanding of the ocean environment of any ancient people. Their fishermen ventured far from shore in reed boats called cabalitos de totora, craft so perfectly adapted to coastal conditions that they are still used by fishermen today. They mapped ocean currents, understood seasonal changes in fish populations, and developed techniques for predicting the devastating El Niño events that periodically disrupted their coastal environment. Their astronomical knowledge was equally sophisticated, with ceremonial centers aligned to mark important celestial events and ceramic depictions of constellations that show detailed understanding of the night sky. The Moche recognized that their survival in the desert environment depended on precise timing of agricultural activities, and they developed calendrical systems that allowed them to coordinate planting and harvesting with seasonal changes in water availability. As we walk through Moche settlements in the peaceful evening hours, we observe communities where skilled artisans work by lamplight, creating the ceramic masterpieces and metal ornaments that will carry their artistic vision across the centuries. We see priests conducting ceremonies in temple courtyards, their chanted prayers rising into the star-filled desert sky. We witness the daily rhythm of a civilization that has achieved a remarkable adaptation to one of Earth's most challenging environments, creating beauty and maintaining prosperity in a land where rain rarely falls. The Moche civilization would eventually decline around 700 CE, perhaps due to a combination of environmental pressures and political instability, but their artistic legacy would continue to influence Andean cultures for centuries to come. Their ceramic tradition established artistic standards that later civilizations would strive to match, and their metalworking techniques would be refined and elaborated by subsequent cultures throughout the Andes. As we drift southward along the Pacific coast, leaving behind the river valleys where the Moche created their ceramic masterpieces, we enter an even more arid landscape where one of ancient America's most enigmatic civilizations flourished for nearly 900 years. Here in the Nazca Desert of southern Peru, between 200 BCE and 650 CE, a remarkable people created not only sophisticated pottery and textiles, but also one of archaeology's greatest mysteries, the famous Nazca lines, enormous drawings etched into the desert floor that can only be fully appreciated from high above the earth. Picture yourself standing on the edge of the Nazca Plateau in the soft light of dawn, looking out across a landscape so dry and barren that it resembles the surface of an alien planet. Yet this seemingly lifeless desert was home to a thriving civilization that created some of the most beautiful art and most puzzling monuments in the ancient world. The Nazca people, like their coastal neighbors, developed sophisticated techniques for surviving in an environment where surface water is virtually non-existent, creating an oasis civilization based on underground aquifers and seasonal rivers that flow from the distant Andes. The Nazca lines stretch across more than 200 square miles of desert floor, encompassing hundreds of individual designs that range from simple geometric shapes to complex animal figures covering areas larger than several football fields. There are straight lines that run for miles across the desert with geometric precision, perfect circles and rectangles that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of mathematical principles, and naturalistic figures that depict hummingbirds, spiders, monkeys, and other creatures with artistic mastery that speaks of profound spiritual significance. The hummingbird geoglyph, one of the most famous Nazca lines, measures 165 feet in length and was created by removing the dark surface stones to reveal the lighter soil beneath, a technique that has preserved these ancient drawings for over a millennium in the stable desert environment. The precision required to create such enormous figures, without the ability to see the overall design from above, demonstrates sophisticated planning and surveying techniques that speak of advanced mathematical and engineering knowledge. But the Nazca lines represent only one aspect of this remarkable civilization's artistic achievement. Nazca potters created vessels that rival those of the Moche in their technical perfection and surpass them in their use of color. Working with mineral pigments derived from their desert environment, Nazca ceramists developed a palette of over a dozen distinct colors, creating polychrome vessels decorated with complex mythological scenes that provide insight into their rich spiritual world. Their pottery depicts a universe populated by supernatural beings who mediate between the human and divine realms. The anthropomorphic mythical being, a central figure, in Nazca iconography, appears in countless variations throughout their art, sometimes shown in human form, other times transformed into a killer whale or other powerful animal spirit. These supernatural figures often hold trophy heads, symbols of spiritual power that played important roles in Nazca religious ceremonies. The Nazca developed what may have been ancient America's most sophisticated understanding of underground water resources. Living in a desert where surface streams flow only during the brief rainy season, they created an elaborate system of underground aqueducts called puquios that tapped into fossil water aquifers deep beneath the desert floor. These remarkable engineering works, some of which are still functioning today, allowed the Nazca to maintain permanent agricultural settlements in one of the world's driest environments. Their textile production achieved levels of technical and artistic sophistication that have never been surpassed. Working with cotton and camelid wool, Nazca weavers created fabrics with thread counts exceeding 500 threads per inch, finer than many modern textiles. Their embroidered mantles, created for burial with elite individuals, display hundreds of supernatural figures arranged in complex patterns that encode mythological narratives and ceremonial instructions. The Nazca burial practices reveal a society deeply concerned with the afterlife and the preservation of social relationships beyond death. Their mummies, wrapped in layers of fine textiles and accompanied by elaborate grave goods, were interred in underground chambers where the dry desert conditions preserved organic materials with remarkable fidelity. These burials provide archaeologists with detailed information about Nazca daily life, from the foods they ate to the clothes they wore to the diseases that affected their communities. Music played an important role in Nazca ceremonial life, as evidenced by the discovery of panpipes, flutes, and drums in archaeological contexts throughout their territory. Their ceramic vessels often depict musicians performing in religious ceremonies, suggesting that music served not merely as entertainment, but as means of communicating with the supernatural world and maintaining cosmic harmony. The Nazca developed extensive trade networks that brought exotic materials from throughout the Andes to their desert homeland. Obsidian from highland volcanoes, shells from tropical waters, and metals from mountain sources all appear in Nazca archaeological sites, indicating commercial relationships that spanned vast distances and diverse ecological zones. This trade not only provided access to essential materials, but also facilitated the exchange of ideas and artistic motifs with other Andean cultures. Their agricultural system was based on the cultivation of crops adapted to desert conditions, including cotton, beans, and various types of squash and gourds. They also grew coca, the sacred plant that played important roles in Andean religious practices, and developed techniques for processing and preserving foods that allowed them to maintain stable populations in their challenging environment. As we walk through Nazca settlements in the quiet hours of evening, when the desert air cools and the first stars appear in the clear sky above, we observe communities where artisans work by firelight, creating the polychrome ceramics and elaborate textiles that will carry their artistic vision across the centuries. We see priests conducting ceremonies in temple courtyards, their rituals designed to maintain the spiritual relationships that ensure the continued flow of underground water and the fertility of their desert oasis. The mystery of why the Nazca created their enormous ground drawings may never be fully solved, but their lines continue to inspire wonder and speculation about the relationship between ancient peoples and the cosmos they inhabited. Some scholars suggest they served as astronomical calendars, others propose they were ritual pathways for religious processions, and still others believe they were offerings to sky gods who could appreciate their full scope and beauty. As we ascend from the coastal deserts into the thin air of the high Andes, we find ourselves at an altitude of nearly 13,000 feet above sea level, standing beside the shores of Lake Titicaca, the world's highest navigable lake. Here, in this landscape of crystalline air and snow-capped peaks, where the oxygen is thin and the sun burns with extraordinary intensity, one of ancient America's most impressive civilizations flourished for over 700 years. The Tiwanaku culture, centered around their magnificent ceremonial complex near the southern shores of Lake Titicaca, created an empire that extended from the high plateau down to the Pacific coast and deep into the tropical forests of the Amazon basin. Imagine yourself walking through the Tiwanaku Ceremonial Center on a crisp morning, when the lake lies mirror-still beneath a brilliant blue sky. Before you rise, monumental stone structures built from blocks so massive and precisely fitted that they seem to have been placed by giants. The largest stones weigh over 100 tons, yet they have been transported from quarries miles away and fitted together with such precision that not even a thin blade can slip between their joints. This is architecture on a scale that speaks of sophisticated engineering knowledge and the ability to mobilize vast amounts of human labor for monumental construction projects. The centerpiece of Tiwanaku architecture is the Kalasasaya, a rectangular stone enclosure that served as an astronomical observatory and ceremonial platform. This remarkable structure is precisely aligned with the cardinal directions and contains stone pillars that mark the positions of the sun during solstices and equinoxes. Standing within the Kalasasaya at dawn on the winter solstice, we would see the sun rise directly between two stone pillars, an alignment that demonstrates sophisticated astronomical knowledge and the importance of solar observations in Tiwanaku religious practice. Within the Kalasasaya stands one of Tiwanaku's most impressive sculptures, a monolithic figure known as the Ponce Stela. This 7-foot-tall stone monument depicts an elaborately dressed individual holding ritual objects, his costume decorated with intricate carvings that encode complex mythological and astronomical information. The figure's belt displays a series of heads that may represent conquered enemies or supernatural beings, while his headdress shows solar symbols that connect him to the celestial realm that governed Tiwanaku cosmology. The Tiwanaku people developed one of ancient America's most sophisticated stone-working traditions, creating not only monumental architecture, but also precision-carved vessels, sculptures, and architectural ornaments that demonstrate mastery of techniques that would be challenging even with modern tools. Their stoneworkers could carve granite and other hard stones with such precision that their surfaces appear to have been polished by machines, creating sculptures of extraordinary beauty and technical perfection. But perhaps Tiwanaku's greatest achievement was in agriculture, where they developed innovative techniques that transformed the harsh, high-altitude environment into one of ancient America's most productive agricultural regions. The Tiwanaku created raised field systems called waru-waru that covered thousands of acres around Lake Titicaca, earth platforms surrounded by water-filled canals that created microclimates warm enough to protect crops from the killing frosts that regularly affect the high plateau. These raised fields represent one of humanity's most sophisticated adaptations to extreme environmental conditions. During the day, water in the canals absorbed solar energy, then released this stored heat during the night, creating temperature differences of several degrees that could mean the difference between a successful harvest and crop failure. The canal systems also provided habitat for fish and waterfowl that supplemented the agricultural diet, while the rich organic deposits that accumulated in the canals served as fertilizer for the raised platforms. Tiwanaku's agricultural innovations allowed them to support populations of unprecedented size in the high Andes, creating the demographic foundation for their territorial expansion and cultural influence. Their farmers cultivated potatoes, quinoa, and other high-altitude crops with yields that exceeded those achieved by modern agriculture in the same region, demonstrating the effectiveness of their traditional techniques. The Tiwanaku economy was based on the control of diverse ecological zones, from the fish and waterfowl of Lake Titicaca to the llama and alpaca herds that grazed on the surrounding grasslands, to the agricultural products of their raised field systems. They developed extensive trade networks that brought tropical products from the Amazon basin, coastal resources from the Pacific, and highland materials from throughout the Andes to their capital city, creating one of ancient America's most complex economic systems. Their textiles achieved levels of artistic sophistication that rival any tradition in the ancient world. Working with wool from their domesticated camelids, Tiwanaku weavers created tapestries with intricate geometric designs and naturalistic figures that demonstrate both technical mastery and profound aesthetic sensibility. Their textile patterns often mirror the stone carvings found on their monuments, suggesting close relationships between different artistic media and shared symbolic systems that unified their cultural expression. Tiwanaku religious practices centered around the worship of celestial deities and the spiritual forces that governed agricultural fertility. Their principal deity appears to have been a solar god, depicted with radiating rays and holding ceremonial staffs, a figure that echoes the Chavín staff god, but shows distinctly Tiwanaku artistic characteristics. This deity appears throughout their art, from monumental stone sculptures to miniature gold ornaments, indicating the central importance of solar worship in their religious system. The Tiwanaku developed sophisticated understanding of astronomical cycles and their relationship to agricultural timing. Their ceremonial calendar was based on careful observations of solar and lunar movements, stellar positions, and seasonal changes that allowed them to coordinate agricultural activities across their diverse ecological zones. Their priests served not only as religious leaders, but as astronomers and agricultural advisors whose knowledge was essential for maintaining the complex systems that supported their civilization. As we walk through Tiwanaku settlements in the peaceful evening hours, when the high-altitude stars shine with unusual brilliance in the thin air, We observe communities where skilled artisans work by lamplight, creating the stone sculptures and woven textiles that will carry their artistic vision across the centuries. We see farmers tending their raised fields, using techniques developed over generations to maximize productivity in this challenging environment. We witness the daily rhythm of a civilization that achieved remarkable prosperity at an altitude where few complex societies have ever flourished. The influence of Tiwanaku culture extended far beyond their highland homeland, reaching coastal settlements hundreds of miles away and establishing trade relationships that spanned the entire Andean region. Their artistic styles and religious concepts influenced cultures throughout the southern Andes, creating what archaeologists call the Middle Horizon, a period of cultural integration that prepared the way for the even more extensive empires that would follow. As the first light of dawn illuminates the highland valleys of central Peru, we find ourselves in the midst of ancient America's first true empire, a vast political and cultural system that extended from the northern highlands to the southern coast, unifying diverse peoples under a sophisticated administrative system that would serve as the model for all subsequent Andean empires. The Wari civilization, flourishing between 600 and 1000 CE, represents a revolutionary moment in Andean history when local chiefdoms and regional cultures were absorbed into a centralized state that controlled territory larger than any previous indigenous American polity. Picture yourself standing on a hillside overlooking the Wari capital, a sprawling urban center that housed perhaps 100,000 inhabitants at its peak, making it one of the largest cities in the pre-Columbian Americas. Below you stretch acre upon acre of stone buildings organized into distinct residential compounds, administrative complexes, and ceremonial areas that reflect sophisticated urban planning principles. The city's straight streets and rectangular plazas demonstrate a geometric precision that speaks of centralized authority and systematic organization, while the massive walls that divide the urban space into separate sectors suggest a highly stratified society with carefully maintained social boundaries. The Wari achieved their territorial expansion not primarily through military conquest, though they certainly possessed formidable military capabilities, but through a combination of diplomatic alliances, economic integration, and administrative efficiency that offered local populations tangible benefits in exchange for political submission. Their empire was held together by an extensive road system that connected highland capitals with coastal cities and jungle outposts, facilitating the rapid movement of armies, administrators, and trade goods across thousands of miles of challenging terrain. Wari administrative centers, established throughout their empire, represent some of ancient America's most sophisticated examples of urban planning and architectural engineering. These provincial capitals, built according to standardized plans that reflect imperial design principles, served as nodes in a vast network of political control and economic exchange. Each center contained residential areas for imperial administrators, warehouses for storing tribute goods, workshops for producing state-sponsored crafts, and ceremonial spaces for conducting the religious rituals that legitimized Wari authority. The architectural signature of Wari imperial expansion can be seen in their distinctive building style, characterized by massive stone walls built from carefully fitted rectangular blocks and organized into complex geometric patterns. Their architects developed sophisticated techniques for constructing multi-story buildings, underground galleries, and drainage systems that demonstrate advanced engineering, knowledge, and the ability to mobilize skilled craftsmen for large-scale construction projects throughout their empire. Wari textile production achieved unprecedented levels of sophistication and standardization, creating fabrics that served not only as clothing and ceremonial objects, but as symbols of imperial authority and markers of social status within their hierarchical society. Their weavers developed techniques for producing tapestries with hundreds of individual figures arranged in complex patterns that encoded administrative information, religious concepts, and political messages. These textiles functioned as portable art galleries that carried Wari cultural values throughout their empire, creating visual bonds that unified diverse populations under imperial rule. The Wari economic system was based on the principle of reciprocity, a traditional Andean concept that they expanded and systematized to manage economic relationships across their vast empire. Local communities provided labor service and agricultural products to imperial administrators, who in return offered protection, access to exotic trade goods, and participation in religious ceremonies that connected local populations to the broader imperial community. This system created economic incentives for cooperation while maintaining the cultural autonomy that made imperial rule acceptable to subject populations. Their agricultural innovations, built upon Tiwanaku, raised field technology, but adapted these techniques to the diverse environmental conditions found throughout their empire. Wari engineers constructed terraced field systems on steep mountain slopes, irrigation networks in arid coastal valleys, and raised platforms in highland basins, creating agricultural infrastructure that supported population densities unprecedented in the pre-Columbian Andes. Their agricultural specialists developed new crop varieties and cultivation techniques that increased productivity and reduced the risk of harvest failure in marginal environments. Wari religious practices synthesized elements from throughout their empire, creating a pan-Andean ceremonial system that honored local deities while promoting imperial gods associated with state authority. Their principal deity appears to have been a version of the staff god tradition that originated with the Chavín but was transformed by Wari theologians into a symbol of imperial unity and cosmic order. This religious synthesis allowed subject populations to maintain their traditional beliefs while participating in imperial ceremonies that reinforced political loyalty and cultural identity. The Wari developed one of ancient America's most sophisticated systems of record-keeping and communication, using knotted string devices called quipu to encode numerical and possibly linguistic information. These remarkable information storage systems allowed imperial administrators to maintain detailed records of population, tribute obligations, agricultural, production, and military resources across their vast empire. Quipu masters, trained specialists who could create and interpret these complex recording devices, formed an essential component of the Wari administrative system. Their metallurgical traditions achieved new levels of sophistication, particularly in the production of bronze tools and weapons that gave Wari armies significant advantages over opponents equipped with stone and copper implements. Wari metalworkers developed techniques for alloying copper with tin and arsenic to create harder, more durable tools that revolutionized both warfare and agriculture throughout the Andes. They also continued the Andean tradition of creating elaborate gold and silver ornaments that served as symbols of authority and markers of social status within their hierarchical society. As we walk through Wari cities in the quiet hours of evening, when the high-altitude stars shine brilliantly in the clear mountain air, we observe communities where imperial administrators work by lamplight, managing the complex systems that hold their vast empire together. We see craft specialists producing the textiles, ceramics, and metal objects that carry Wari cultural values throughout their domain. We witness the daily operations of a sophisticated state system that represents one of humanity's earliest experiments in large-scale political organization and territorial administration. The Wari achievement in urban planning extended beyond their capital to encompass dozens of provincial centers, each designed according to imperial architectural principles, but adapted to local environmental conditions and cultural preferences. These cities demonstrate sophisticated understanding of hydraulic engineering, with elaborate drainage and water supply systems that maintained urban sanitation and provided reliable access to clean water for large populations living at high altitudes where traditional water sources might be unreliable. Their road system, which would later be expanded and perfected by the Inca, represented one of ancient America's greatest engineering achievements. Wari engineers constructed paved highways that traversed mountain passes, bridged deep valleys, and connected coastal deserts with highland cities and jungle outposts. These roads facilitated not only political control and military movement, but also commercial exchange and cultural communication that created the foundation for Andean civilization's later achievements. The Wari Empire would eventually fragment around 1000 CE, perhaps due to climate changes that disrupted their agricultural systems or internal political conflicts that weakened imperial authority. However, their innovations in administration, architecture, and territorial organization would be inherited and perfected by subsequent Andean civilizations, particularly the Inca, who built upon Wari foundations to create the largest empire in pre-Columbian American history. As the sun rises over the snow-capped peaks of the Cordillera, casting golden light across the terraced mountainsides and stone cities of the high Andes, we arrive at the culmination of our journey through ancient Andean civilizations. Here, in the space of less than a century, the Inca created Tawantinsuyu, the land of the four quarters, an empire that stretched from modern-day Colombia to Chile and from the Pacific Ocean to the edges of the Amazon rainforest, encompassing over 12 million people and representing the largest political entity in the history of the pre-Columbian Americas. Picture yourself standing in the main plaza of Cusco, the Inca capital, in the early morning hours when the thin mountain air carries the sounds of a awakening city across stone-paved streets and carefully fitted walls. Around you rise buildings constructed with such precision that Spanish chroniclers would marvel that not even a knife blade could be inserted between the massive stone blocks. The Temple of the Sun, covered in sheets of gold that catch and reflect the first rays of dawn, dominates the ceremonial heart of a city that the Inca considered the center of their universe, the place where the four great roads that connected their empire converged in a sacred plaza paved with stones brought from every corner of their realm. The Inca achievement represents not a revolutionary break with Andean tradition, but rather the culmination and perfection of cultural developments that had been evolving for over 3 millennia. They inherited the agricultural innovations of Tiwanaku, the administrative systems of the Wari, the artistic traditions of the Moche and Nazca, and the religious concepts of the Chavín, synthesizing these diverse elements into a unified imperial culture that honored the past while creating something entirely new and unprecedented in its scope and sophistication. Their empire was organized around the principle of Aini, reciprocal obligation that bound together individuals, communities, and entire ethnic groups in networks of mutual support and shared responsibility. Every citizen of Tawantinsuyu had obligations to provide labor service to the state, whether in agricultural work, construction projects, military service, or craft production, but these obligations were balanced by corresponding rights to receive support during times of need, access to stored food during famines, and protection from external enemies. The Inca road system, building upon Wari foundations but extending and perfecting their engineering techniques, represented one of humanity's greatest achievements in transportation infrastructure. Over 25,000 miles of paved highways connected every corner of their empire, traversing mountain passes over 16,000 feet above sea level, spanning deep river gorges on suspension bridges woven from plant fibers, and crossing desert wastes where way stations provided water and shelter for travelers. These roads enabled the rapid movement of armies, administrators, and information across distances that would challenge modern transportation systems. The chasqui, relay runners who carried messages and small objects along these imperial highways, could deliver communications from Cusco to the furthest provinces in a matter of days, creating a communication network that allowed centralized administration of their vast empire. These highly trained athletes, stationed at way stations spaced at intervals of a few miles, could maintain running speeds that allowed urgent messages to travel at rates approaching 200 miles per day across terrain that would challenge modern vehicles. Inca architecture achieved levels of seismic engineering that continue to amaze modern structural engineers. Their buildings, constructed without mortar using techniques of precise stone fitting that they perfected over generations, have survived earthquakes that destroyed Spanish colonial structures built on the same sites. The secret of their seismic resistance lies not only in the precision of their stone cutting, but in their understanding of how structures behave during ground motion, with walls that taper inward and stone joints that allow controlled movement without structural failure. At Machu Picchu, the royal estate built for the Emperor Pachacuti on a dramatic mountain ridge 8,000 feet above sea level, we can observe Inca architecture at its most refined and sophisticated. This remarkable site, with its precisely fitted stone buildings integrated seamlessly into the natural topography, demonstrates the Inca ability to create harmony between human construction and the sacred landscape they inhabited. Every building, every terrace, every stairway at Machu Picchu is positioned to take advantage of astronomical alignments, topographical features, and aesthetic considerations that create an environment of profound beauty and spiritual power. The Inca agricultural system supported the largest population in pre-Columbian American history through innovations that transformed the challenging Andean environment into one of the world's most productive agricultural regions. Their engineers constructed over 1 million acres of agricultural terraces that converted steep mountain slopes into stepped fields capable of supporting intensive cultivation. These terraces, built with sophisticated drainage systems and soil management techniques, created microclimates that allowed the cultivation of crops at altitudes and in conditions where agriculture would otherwise be impossible. Their storage system, based on thousands of warehouses strategically located throughout the empire, maintained food reserves sufficient to support the entire population through multiple years of harvest failure. These storehouses, built with sophisticated ventilation systems that prevented spoilage, contained not only agricultural products, but also textiles, tools, weapons, and other manufactured goods that could be distributed to communities in need or used to support state projects and military campaigns. Inca textile production achieved the pinnacle of Andean weaving traditions, creating fabrics so fine and beautiful that Spanish conquistadors considered them more valuable than gold. The finest Inca textiles, woven from vicuña wool with thread counts exceeding those of modern silk, were reserved for the emperor and the highest nobility, serving as symbols of authority and markers of social status within their hierarchical society. These textiles encoded complex information about rank, ethnic identity, and ceremonial function, creating a visual language that could be read by initiated members of their society. Their understanding of astronomy reached sophisticated levels of precision, with ceremonial centers designed to mark important celestial events and agricultural calendars based on careful observations of solar, lunar, and stellar cycles. The Intihuatana stone at Machu Picchu, carved to track the sun's movement throughout the year, demonstrates their ability to create astronomical instruments of remarkable accuracy using only stoneworking tools and careful observation of celestial phenomena. The Inca religious system synthesized beliefs and practices from throughout their empire while maintaining the distinctly Andean understanding of the sacred landscape that had characterized highland cultures for millennia. Their supreme deity, Inti the sun god, presided over a pantheon that included mountain spirits, weather deities, and the mummified remains of deceased emperors who continued to participate in state ceremonies and political decisions even after death. Their social organization was based on the Ailu, kinship groups that traced descent from common ancestors and maintained collective ownership of land and resources. These traditional social units were incorporated into the imperial administrative system through a decimal hierarchy that organized populations into groups of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000 households, creating an efficient system for taxation, labor mobilization, and military recruitment. As we drift through Inca cities and settlements in these final moments of our journey, we observe the daily rhythm of a civilization that achieved remarkable prosperity and cultural sophistication in one of the world's most challenging environments. We see farmers tending terraced fields that climb impossible slopes, craftsmen creating textiles and metal objects of extraordinary beauty, engineers constructing roads and buildings that will endure for centuries, and administrators managing the complex systems that hold their vast empire together. The Inca Empire would meet its end not through internal collapse or gradual decline, but through the devastating impact of European diseases and the military conquest by Spanish adventurers who arrived at a moment of imperial civil war. Yet their achievements in architecture, agriculture, and social organization continue to influence Andean peoples today, and their archaeological remains stand as monuments to one of humanity's most remarkable adaptations to extreme environmental conditions. As our gentle journey through time draws to a close, we carry with us the memory of these extraordinary civilizations that flourished in the high Andes for over 3 millennia, each building upon the achievements of their predecessors to create an unbroken chain of cultural innovation and artistic expression. From the mysterious religious centers of the Chavín to the golden temples of the Inca, these ancient peoples demonstrated that human ingenuity and cultural creativity can flourish even in the most challenging environments, leaving behind a legacy of achievement that continues to inspire wonder and admiration in all who encounter their remarkable story. Sleep well, knowing that in your dreams you may walk again through these ancient cities, hear the whisper of wind through stone corridors, and witness the enduring triumph of human creativity over the challenges of geography and time. The spirit of the Andes lives on in the stones they carved, the fields they terraced, and the roads they built, eternal monuments to civilizations that touched the sky and left their mark upon the world. Chat controls Sonnet 4,